So for everybody that wasn't here, can you just summarize what you were talking about today?
Sure. Today we covered the basic concept of advertisers and brands trying to figure out and navigate social media and social inventory, and basically how to encourage users of social networks to interact and interact with their brands, basically, or the products.
And obviously you're very good at spotting, what the potential of, new trends are. What is the potential for companies to market through social networks?
The potential is huge because that's where the consumers are, and that's where people are spending 40-50% of their time online is within these social environments. So the win for companies and brands that do it correctly is they've got a massive new base of customers that haven't heard of their product or heard of their brand, that are sort of waiting there doing other things, but waiting to be presented the right product or offer or whatever the case may be.
And do you think online advertising through social networks has to be a little bit more subtle than traditional advertising? It's a lot more like in your face, here we are. It strikes me with, through social networks, it's a lot more about subtlety and becoming friends with your target market.
Right, that's a great point. So I think it has to be a little more subtle than a billboard or than a Super Bowl ad, because it is in that social environment and it is a two-way conversation. So if it's too aggressive or not appropriate, users will definitely go out of their way to speak back and basically combat any advertising that they feel like is over the top. But so it has to be more subtle or more well-placed. But other than that, the opportunity is such that brands just have to maybe work a little harder, is kind of a simple term, but I think in general advertising in social networks just takes a little more thoughtfulness on behalf of the advertiser or the brand with how they can incorporate their product in something that is either entertaining or useful or engaging to the user environment, and therefore they don't have to worry about being considered kind of over-the-top combative.
Because for me, I get loads of emails from my Facebook, and I get loads of people just bombarding me with groups or events that they're having, or, I don't know, buy this kind of in a really non-subtle way. And for me, that's where I see the downfall of Facebook. It's coming into a blatant online marketing tool, and I just don't like it. It's a turn-off.
Right. And there is some element of that that's already happened. When we really launched advertising into Myspace in 2004-ish, there was a lot of user feedback saying, hey, we don't want to have advertising. The issue is, of course, Facebook, MySpace, you name it, any of these social networks, if you offer a no advertising environment for even $1.95 a month or $2, you'd be amazed how few people would actually sign up for that.
All the way in from the States for this, is there anything here that you've learned or thought, wow, that's interesting, across the pond?
That's a good question. I honestly thought the whole thing was interesting. The very consistent themes were pounded home. I hadn't seen any of the other 5 presentations, but if you notice, every single one basically made the point that the days of standalone brand websites are over, and it just doesn't work. You basically have to take your product, take your brand into where the community is. So there were themes like that were pounded home over and over, and I think the only thing that maybe surprised me a little bit was just how consistent the message was across Nielsen, to the agencies, to the brands themselves, to the internet people.
Okay, and now I've got just a few questions from Twitter, because I tweeted that I was going to interview you, and some people suggested some questions. So firstly, what social networks do you use?
Believe it or not, so I'm on MySpace just from being originally on there. And then recently, which shows you the sign of the times, I've had to join Facebook just because, a couple different reasons. One, I'm 36 years old, so a lot of my 36-year-old sort of UCLA friends are on it. So I wanted to sort of get on and check it out. And then two, as far as the ad format, we do so much with in the application space within Facebook. I wanted to be on there and actually see how the ads were presented to the users and stuff like that. So those two, although to be honest, I spend very, very little time, relatively speaking, on social networks just because I'm moving around all over the place all the time.
All right, and I've got one question from @ScottJones, and he says, have you got any advice for startups in the current economic climate?
It's a good question. I do. Advice for startups in the current economic climate is batten down the hatch. There's sort of two different phases. If you're already funded, I would make the assumption that you're not going to get any more funding and that you need to get to break even or profitability with your existing amount of cash. And if that means instead of having 8 people, you have 4, if it means instead of having 80 people, you have 40, whatever the case may be, you need to do it with that. If you are, on the other hand, you haven't got funded yet, you're in sort of startup mode, I would assume funding, if you thought it was going to be 6 months out, it'll be 18 months out. And make sure that whatever you're building incorporates a revenue model, a real revenue model as soon as possible. The one kind of side note to add, unlike in 96, 97, 98 when we were starting internet businesses where there was no kind of Google AdSense type product where you can just pull it down and start making ad revenue, today in 2008, the amazing thing is not only can you build infrastructure for a site at a fraction of the cost, but you can actually start making revenue from day one. So I would encourage anyone launching something today to really understand and take full advantage of that so they can help fund their business.
Okay, and I've got one more question, a couple more questions. One from Jennifer Sutcliffe, who said, if you, I'm not sure if you would know because you sold MySpace, but how many recording contracts have occurred after they were discovered on MySpace? Do you know that?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure anyone knows that exact answer, but a decent amount. So there's something like 350,000 bands on MySpace. I would say in recording contracts, I'm just guessing, but I'd say something like 15 to 50 number of actual recording contracts that have come out of a MySpace band from their MySpace page.
And a question from @Paul Walsh. He said, have you ever thrown a sheep at anyone?
Have I ever thrown a sheep at anyone? I have not.
All right, and lastly but not least, your words about the American election. You were there last night, weren't you?
I was in New York yesterday, and then I came here yesterday. So I wasn't there for the final election. It was actually fun being here in London last night. I walked around and went to Big Ben and walked through Hyde Park, and I noticed there were a lot of the pubs that had the election on were full of people, so I kind of stuck my head in. It definitely seemed like a pro-Obama crowd here in the UK, which, I was thrilled. And I think more than anything so far, just Obama winning, if nothing else, it signifies, number one, a pretty incredible thing when you think about where he was 4 years ago and the fact that he's now the president of the United States. And two, a kind of worldwide, in the current crisis, economic crisis, and really in the geopolitical kind of terrorist crisis that we're in as well, a totally new, non-Washington, D.C. type person in Washington could be a huge win, and it gives us an opportunity. He's got to execute and he's got to make the right decisions. But I think we, the U.S., and really the Western countries in general, Western democracies, have an opportunity to take this and really make worldwide relations just better.
Woohoo, Obama!
That's right, Obama.
Our cameraman got so excited that he fainted. Well, thank you very much, Brett. Thanks very much.
Thank you.